foundation of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. My name is Michael Evans, and you're listening to America's Voice Now. Thanks for joining with us this morning. We had a kind of an interesting show on Saturday. If you haven't gotten a chance to, or if you weren't available to listen to that, please feel free to find it on our YouTube page. You can find it by going to youtube.com/America's Voice Now. The show is broken up into 3 segments. We typically try to keep each show underneath an hour because it's hard to, one, we're covering multiple topics, but 2, it's hard to, sit through an entire hour or 3-hour show without being broken down. I want to comment this morning in reference to 2 issues. In the first half of the show, we're going to talk about the NSA and the leaking regarding what's going on over in Europe and the backlash from that. And then in the latter part of our show, we're going to talk about Egypt and Morsi and the protesting that's going on over there. It's apparent to me that the folks over in Egypt are apparently far more awake than the people in the United States of America. I mean, they got 22 million people who signed a petition to oust Morsi, and that's greater than the percentage of folks who even vote in our country. So it's stunning to me that we are as asleep at the switch as we are. But in our first segment, I want to talk about spying and what we're doing and how we're destroying our own reputation overseas with even our friends. When we talk about the idea of spying, usually, and to most folks, that's reserved for the enemy, right? I mean, everybody understands that, you're going to spy on your enemies, and everyone understands that you're going to try to bug their political offices and have espionage and blah, blah, blah. But what we're dealing with now is more along the lines of our allies and our friends over there. And, when you talk about bugging Germany and Europe and the other nations over there that are our allies, you've got to question the mindset here. France and Germany are furious. In fact, Germany came out and made some very, very negative statements. And John Kerry, our new Secretary of State, is a buffoon. I mean, he made a public statement that spying on allies is not unusual. We're bugging 38 foreign embassies. And Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister of Germany, came out and branded it unacceptable. And it is. Bugging friends don't let friends bug. I'm appalled that Kerry and this administration would attempt to make this sound or look as if it's acceptable. And I think the part that bothers me the most about it is that we're rapidly turning any allies we have into enemies. I mean, we already have enough of those. The entire Middle East hates our guts, with one exception of Israel. And even they, have serious concerns with this administration in general. And they rely upon the United States to be an ally to them in the Middle East, where they are surrounded by enemies. The only nation over there that actually shows any level of allegiance to us, because all the rest of them, including our alleged allies like the UAE and Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, those nations are so clearly in it only for the benefits that we provide. I mean, it's so obvious. They know that their regimes are backed and protected by the United States of America under the petrodollar arrangement. Now, the petrodollar arrangement, for those of you who don't know, states basically that, and we made an agreement and a commitment to keep them in power so long as they force everyone to pay for oil from the OPEC nations in dollars. So if you're China, you have to convert the yuan to U.S. dollars. If you're Russia, you've got to convert the ruble. If you're a European Union country, you've got to convert the euro to the dollar in order to purchase oil from those nations. And it was our government's attempt to prop up the U.S. dollar's value and force it to become or continue to be part of the world's reserve currency. Now, as you know, and I've talked about this before, the BRICS nations, which is a host of different countries over there from Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Australia, and a host of others, they are stepping away from using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. Once the Middle Eastern countries and the OPEC nations determine that the U.S. dollar is no longer viable as a forced conversion currency, I guess that's the right word to use, phrase to use, they will break the petrodollar deal, and our nation's economic stability and the value of the dollar will go down in flames. I understand that we would want to monitor countries that are our enemies. I don't understand wanting to monitor our neighbors and our friends and our allies. To me, that is disrespectful, to say the least, and it immediately changes the tenor of any future negotiations on any issue. And I don't care whether it's trade or whether it's intellectual technology or it's copyright or if it's I mean, it could be anything. We are rapidly turning our allies into enemies. And we are giving food to the hatred of the enemies that already exist over there. And I suspect that, the long-term issue here will be that we will have worn out the trust that we may have had with our allies and find ourselves in a position of negotiating from a position of weakness instead of a position of strength as we move forward. I understand the value of having inside intelligence when you're trying to negotiate a deal. I also think it's foolish to bug them for the sake of curiosity. And they're not going to take it. You see, the way that this is operating, and a brand new release by The Guardian from Edward Snowden's cache of whatever secrets, shows a whole new methodology by which they are utilizing. It's called Dropmire, and they are implanted at the European Embassy in D.C. And that's the way in which the EU Embassy transmits, secure cables and information back and forth. Now, you gotta question the intelligence of these people when this is the kind of behavior that they don't just limit to enemies. And what's more troublesome is that now that we know that they're doing it to both Americans and foreign governments, who's left? I'm appalled and shocked. And I'm asking America, How much longer, America, are you going to tolerate this type of behavior, which is detrimental to our national security and safety, detrimental to your personal security and safety, and detrimental to our republic as a whole? I mean, this is unconscionable behavior. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Mike Evans.
The Battery Station in West Plains is your headquarters for getting and being prepared. Natural disasters, civil unrest, personal and family protection, long-term sustenance, and most importantly, peace of mind. Berkey bottles and home-sized water purification systems, survival food, MREs, freeze-dried food, survival knives, lanterns, ammunition, military sleep system, and of course, batteries of all shapes and sizes. Take charge of your own survival and security. The Battery Station, 303 Washington in West Plains, 417-257-7799 or batterystation.com.
If you're looking for great deals on iPads or Kindles, look no further than your neighborhood Radio Shack authorized sales center. They've got great deals on the latest iPads and Kindles. Maybe you need a new GPS or an MP3 player to get your music library ready for those barbecues. Whatever your electronic needs, stop by your local neighborhood Radio Shack authorized dealer in West Plains at 1408 Southern Hills Shopping Center or call 417-256-1819.
You know, Germany, after, or before, I should say, Obama was elected, touted what a great guy he was going to be. And the German people were highly motivated by the Obama administration, thinking that, he was going to dramatically change the way in which the United States was perceived overseas, that we were going to start this new Renaissance period of allies, or with our allies, I should say. And now it turns out that they find that they've been played as well. Not only have the American people been played, but all of our ally nations are finding that they've been played as well. And it's not going over well. That means, in other words, the German people are finding out that their actual cell phone records are being captured as well. Now, it's one thing for a government to spy on its own citizens, and I don't mean that in a permissible manner. What I'm saying is, most other nations would view it as, it's one thing to monitor your own people. That governments accept tyranny from other governments all the time. But if we found out, for example, that Venezuela or Germany or France or England was monitoring American phone calls, we'd be furious. And I mean, with good reason. Now, they're finding out that we're monitoring them, and that we have turned into not only the local police department for the world, but we have become the police state of the world. That's not good. America has such an influence internationally that for us to take this type of activity and make it mainstream, I mean, it would be one thing to monitor, a phone call between one guy who you already have established may have a terror, intent, and he's using Germany as a base of operations or what have you. But when you're sitting there monitoring the phone calls of average Germans, wow, that's pretty brassy. And Kerry is an absolute idiot. He may be the Secretary of State, but I got to tell you, Kerry was never good as a senator. He has always been an operative against the United States of America. He betrayed his comrades in Vietnam. And now he's sitting around out here betraying our friends around the world. Microphones were actually put in buildings, and computers were compromised in the European Union's consulate in New York and Washington, and the UN offices. Gary comes out and says bugging is not unusual and spying on allies is not unusual. When 38 countries came back and said, hey, we don't like that. They're outraged, rightly so. And our nation not only owes the world an apology, our government owes us an apology. And we're going to talk about the complexity of the Morsi Egyptian situation in our next segment. But I got to bring it back up again, over and over and over again. Why are we not massively, peacefully marching on Washington in civil disobedience to demand that this stop, that they get out, and that we restore our nation to a constitutional framework? Our founders made it clear that the only way that this republic would survive was by men of moral standing. Men of moral and religious conviction was their phrase. Well, apparently there's no moral conviction. I mean, the word moral in Obama administration can never be used in the same sentence. I mean, this is an administration that touts babies who are born after a botched abortion should be allowed to die and terminated. This is an administration which is killing American citizens overseas with drones without respect to whose collateral damage in that. This is an administration that screams at everyone else for human rights excesses and yet has passed the National Defense Authorization Act that allows them to create a gulag-like system that, quite frankly, we still don't know if they're holding Americans within. The hypocrisy is writ large all over the wall, and the world sees it. Why Americans don't see it is beyond me. And why Americans are not willing to take a stand and say, we've had enough, and we're going on a national strike to shut this down and shut them out, is beyond my comprehension. I don't understand it. I cannot fathom why people consider that that's not the only solution available to us, short of a complete dissolution of the Union and a destruction of our republic under the Second Amendment. You see, if we don't take action soon, that will be our last resort. And I promise you, that's not a resort we want to have to go to. But you see, without Americans being willing to stand up and take action, we're almost forcing our own hand in that regard. I mean, this quote from Churchill should be a national statement that should be memorized and on the lips of every American. And I don't care where you meet someone who's a total stranger, you should be able to turn around and spit this quote out. If you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of success. There may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as slaves. That should be our national mantra. We should have Americans walking around, tens of millions of them, stating that quote to anyone who will listen. Because the window with which we can fight for right when we can easily do so without the bloodshed, is closing. Anyone who says they don't see that is intellectually dishonest. Even the liberal class, the progressives in the nation, are beginning to awaken to the tyranny that's being literally enveloped around us. There was a senator the other day, I apologize, he was a congressman, and he came out on the floor and he said, tyranny? You want to know what tyranny looks like? Look around you. For someone in Congress to say that means that it's no longer a dirty little secret. That it's no longer a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. Don't you see, people? And this is moving so rapidly, so quickly, that by the time those people who are naysayers or just complete fence sitters are willing to accept and acknowledge the truth of this, it's going to be too late. I don't know what else America needs to do to be kicked off the park bench so that they begin to actually start taking some action. You know, the idea that you can sit and allow this government to collapse underneath the weight of tyranny when it's guaranteed to affect you. These people who say, well, I what am I supposed to do? Give up my job? What do you think? I'm going to give up my $150,000 a year job working on Wall Street? Well, let me tell you something. Under a scenario of tyranny, all those things that you thought you valued are all gone anyway. Your house is going to be gone. Those fancy cars that you drive, your job, the toys. You think that boat is important to you? Well, under a tyrannical regime, you won't be able to get fuel for it. You'll be condemned as the bourgeois. By the way, for the record, bourgeois translated means middle class. It is not the rich. It is middle class. And we've been listening to this administration and the progressive left demonizing the right and the 1%, which isn't really the 1%. It's probably the 50%. You see, the problem here is that only in the United States of America could someone sit up there and demonize the rich at a $35,000 a plate fundraiser dinner. I mean, if you want to talk about the ultimate hypocrisy, right? Here you are charging $20,000, $30,000, $35,000 a plate to go and listen to a politician tell you that you're the scum of the earth. I mean, where the hell else does that happen? Only in America, as the phrase goes. Only in America would people be so completely and absolutely delusional as to pay that kind of money to hear that person demagogue, demonize, and destroy them and plot and plan and scheme for their demise. I get it when the average American doesn't really get what's going on because he's so busy running hand to mouth, working 16 hours a day, 14 hours a day, that he doesn't have the time to focus on national and international issues. But the wealthy, they have no excuse. The news media, they have no excuse. I'm appalled. It would be like standing out in the park on a beautiful, brilliant day at noontime and having a bunch of people sitting there trying to convince you it's actually dark. Would you believe it? Would you believe your own lion eyes? Huh? I'm Michael Evans. We'll take a break in a moment.
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Sal Giangresso. A tragic outcome from a fast-moving, out-of-control fire in Yarnell, Arizona, about 85 miles northwest of Phoenix.
19 members of the Prescott Fire Department were killed on Sunday. They're members of the Granite Mountain Hotshots, an elite unit that goes to the front lines to battle fires like this. It's unclear how this happened. We do know the conditions played into it. The fire took a turn for the worse, surprising the firefighters. Authorities are investigating.
Fox's Will Carr in Wickenburg, Arizona.
It's unexplainable. This is a tragedy that's none of us ever thought would happen in our community, let alone in the firefighting community.
Wade Ward of the Prescott Fire Department. The lightning-spark fire also destroyed 200 homes, sent hundreds fleeing from Yarnell. Residents huddling in shelters and bars watching their homes burn on TV as flames lit up the night sky. This is a Fox News Alert.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, Wits End Classic Barbershop, who is the sponsor of our telephone lines this morning. They're located on the square in West Plains. It's Wits End Classic Barbershop. Thanks to our friends over at West Plains Pawn and Gun. You can find them on the web at westplainspawn.com. They can be reached at 417-256-3000, and they're located on Route 160, about a mile past Walmart on the right-hand side. 400 guns undercover. Pizza Hut, our friends down there on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. They have an outstanding lunch menu with salad, pizza, and pasta. Excellent opportunity for you to have a great lunch and eat well and something tasty. Our friends over at the Battery Station at 303 Washington Avenue. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. Telephone 417-257-7799. Our friends over at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance can be found on the web at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com. My friend Brian there can be reached at 870-492-4030. They're located a half-mile east of Walmart at 3225 Route 62, Mountain Home. My friend Mary over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery, the best damn bakery in 100 miles. She's right off the square in West Plains at 2 Evans Arcade, and you can reach her at 255-2253. And my friend Bill Stone over at Stone Construction. If you're considering doing remodeling, custom or new construction, or anything light commercial, give Bill a call and have him bid on your project at 293-0116.
Out of 365 days a year, we celebrate holidays, anniversaries, and other important days. But there is one day you look forward to, your birthday. I wanna wish you a happy birthday. Ryan's Steakhouse of West Plains is proud to bring you the Birthday Club weekday mornings with Cooper & Company. Our daily winner receives one buffet and a drink to Ryan's. Just call your birthdays in weekday mornings with Cooper & Company at 255-0427. Brought to you by Ryan's and the Ozark's Best News Talk.
And happy birthday to you! Cha-cha-cha.
Weather sponsorships are now available on News Talk 107.1 The Point. Get more information, email info@diamondmediaradio.com for complete details.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, a partly cloudy sky, mixed clouds and sun with a slight chance for a thunderstorm this afternoon and evening. The high temperature 78. Otherwise, partly cloudy tonight, low 58. Partly sunny tomorrow, the high 70.